Hi everybody, this is Carissa with Inky Fairy Designs, back with Brutus Monroe, and today I'm going to be creating 3 different projects using one stamp, just to show you how versatile any stamp can be. So I decided to use this vintage floral background for all of my projects today. It's a beautiful background stamp with these florals. My first project, I'll be using some alcohol ink. So first I have pulled out some alcohol lift ink to do that lifting technique. I'm going to use the blower, and I am also going to be using these 5 alcohol inks. I just picked a variety of rainbow colors. Also wanted to pull out some alcohol blending solution as well as some 91% isopropyl alcohol. Both of these things work interchangeably, relatively. So for this background, I am using, I had mocked up a previous background that I had done, and you can see how you can just layer the alcohol inks right on top of whatever you have there. And whatever you put on top, that's going to show. So I just started by laying down like the red and the yellow in sort of a diagonal area. I pulled out this Blue Lagoon color and dropped in some of that darker blue. I just wanted a little bit of variety there. With a teal blue and then the darker blue and then just a bit of purple in that bottom right hand corner. You can see I'm using the new Tim Holtz blower tool, I think is what it's called. It's awesome because I used to do this kind of stuff with a straw, and I would feel like I'm going to pass out just from the fumes and stuff. This tool has totally changed my world with alcohol inks. It makes it so much easier. I don't notice the fumes as much, and it just really helps to move the alcohol ink on the paper. Speaking of paper, I am working on Yupo paper, which is really ideal when you're working with alcohol inks. Okay, so here we are. I'm taking my stamp with that alcohol lift ink and really inking up that stamp. You can see I'm working in a stamp platform so that I'm trying to keep my paper in one position because I do want to do this twice. So first time I'm just going to press that stamp down onto my paper. Really nice firm pressure all around that stamp. Now I'm going to gently lift it up. Alcohol ink is very sticky. I don't know if it's me or if that's just the general nature of it, but it is quite sticky. So once I get that up, and I did manage to not move my paper, I'm going to pat it with a paper towel to remove that ink. The cool thing is you can take another piece of cardstock, place it face down on the stamp that has lifted off all of that ink, and look, you get this beautiful second impression. So you can really get 2 cards out of this one technique, which is really awesome. So now I'm inking it up again just to get that second stamping on there. This just helps to pull up even more of that ink and really get that to lift off the paper to leave that stamp impression behind. So you can see I'm going to remove that with the paper towel. I am switching out my paper towel here and there, and then you can see that beautiful stamped impression that is left behind on that pretty background. I absolutely love it. It's just such a beautiful way to use your stamps with some alcohol inks. Okay, so I set that aside to dry a little bit more. And I'm going to go on into my second card. So for this one, I wanted to stamp on the lunch bag cardstock, which is like a craft paper. And I just inked up like one corner of the stamp, and I'm looking at it through the, before I press it down, and I thought I didn't really like that super strong angular look. So I'm just taking my ink pad and kind of going around looking at it through the stamp. That's the great thing about clear stamps. You can kind of see how it's going to look. Once I'm happy, I will close that door and just apply some firm pressure. I needed to do a second round of inking, so I'm just going to use that same ink. I'm using the Detail Ink and Raven from Brutus Monroe to do this. It stamps beautifully on this craft cardstock. And so the second time I do that and really kind of I stand up this time and give it a lot of pressure, and I'm able to get the image that I wanted. To continue on with this second card, I'm going to take some of this alabaster pigment ink and just a blending brush, and I'm going to soften up those edges because it wasn't super clean. I had a little bit of, uh, it didn't stamp all the way cleanly towards the edge just because of the nature of the background stamp, and so I just wanted to soften that edge up with a little bit of this pigment ink. And I think it's just a beautiful soft ink blending on the craft cardstock. I really love the way that the white looks on the craft against the black stamping. It's a very soft look, and I just love the simplicity of this particular technique or card that we're making. And it's a really fast one. So when you look at these beautiful background stamps, sometimes you think, oh my gosh, I love that stamp, but I don't want to color all of that. Don't think that you always have to color these background stamps. This is a great way to use this stamp in a different way. And I think the image is just beautiful. The details in it really pop when you stamp it on the craft cardstock. And now I'm adding just a little bit of white splatters to that panel, and I just love the way that that looks. To finish off this card, I'm going to take the sentiment that comes with this set, and it says, focus on the good, which is such a great thing, especially right now. But anytime, this sentiment is just a great uplifting saying, and it will brighten up anybody's day if they're going through a rough time. We can always focus on the good no matter what situation we are going through. So I'm just stamping that twice to really get a nice dark impression, and that finishes off that panel. So while I have my stamp in my positioner, I'm going to go ahead and clean it off, and then I'm going to take that same pigment ink, the white alabaster, and I'm going to stamp it on this black cardstock. So I'm going to clean off that black ink, and then I'm going to stamp it with the alabaster pigment ink. I really love the way that this stamps on dark cardstock. If you don't have embossing powders, this is a great way to get that pop of white, and the pigment ink stamps beautifully. So I'm going to go ahead and finish off these two cards before I move on to the third and final technique with this stamp set. And to do so, I just cut a sheet of the Not Your Mama's cardstock in half and then scored it at 5.5 to create a top folding A2 size card. I cut a sheet of black cardstock just slightly smaller than the card base, and then I went ahead and used a die to cut this panel, and now I'm just layering that, and I really like the way that it looks with the black cardstock framing it. And now, just to add a little bit of detail to this very simple card, I took out some black sequins, and I'm using some of my tiny zots to attach my sequins to the card, and that will finish up this card. I really, out of all of the projects that I'm going to show you today, even though some of them they're all really, really beautiful, this one, for some reason, is my favorite. I just love the simplicity of it, and there's just something about a nice detail image stamped on craft cardstock. Okay, so to finish off that beautiful alcohol inked background, I went ahead and die cut it to fit an A2 size card perfectly. And then I also went ahead and die cut it again in the middle. And I did that so that I could place some dimensional adhesive in that middle rectangle and kind of pop it up a little bit. So to do that, I just took this full sheet of foam adhesive and cut it down to fit right behind that perfectly. and it's a thinner adhesive. It's a thinner foam adhesive. After I put it on, it didn't have as much dimension as I wanted. It is super subtle. If I had thought it through, I would have doubled that up so that I could have had a little bit more pop. But you can see there's a tiny bit of dimension there. Then I just die cut that black cardstock that I had stamped the sentiment on, and I'm going to just place that right in the middle, and that really finishes off that beautiful card. With the alcohol inks, like I said, sometimes it stays a little bit sticky, and to fix that relatively quickly, I just take some foil, and where if you just lay it on top and rub it down, that foil is going to stick to whatever the alcohol, wherever the alcohol ink isn't completely dry and has that kind of tacky feel to it. And so I'm just running that all around the card, and you can see where it's sticking to the background, and it just leaves a really pretty foil look. So you can see it here. It's super shiny and super pretty. And that's the way that the alcohol ink card looks like. I love that alcohol lift ink. It really shows the detail of the stamp. And then of course here is the one that I stamped on the lunch bag cardstock. It's just so pretty. I love it. Okay, so for our final technique, I'm going to do a little bit of mixed media. So I pulled out some Distress Oxide sprays in just a pink, blue, and a purple. I really wanted to keep it in the same color family, and I'm just spraying it onto some watercolor paper, adding some water and letting it really kind of move around and blend into each other. So I have this really beautiful background. While it is wet, I'm taking a dry paper towel and trying to lift off some of that ink. Then I'll go in with a baby wipe and lift off even more. So you can see the Distress Oxides are water reactive, so it will remove some of that color from the baby wipe. And then to use that same stencil from Brutus Monroe, I'm going to use some Pumice Stone Distress Oxides and spray that and add a little bit more texture. Now I'm going to create some ATCs with that beautiful background and this stamp. So I cut out a few cards sized 2.5 by 3.5, and now I'm just going to place them on that background stamp that I left in the door of my stamp positioner, but I took the door off because I wasn't going to use it. So just place them down and press them down from the behind, and got some beautiful impressions. And now I'm going to go ahead and do that again. So instead of laying them all, I'm just kind of placing them on the stamp and just randomly getting a few of those petals and leaves onto that background. And it's just such a great way to add some texture and dimension to some ATCs, which are artist trading cards, if you guys didn't know. So now I'm just going to take that Detail Raven ink and ink up all of the edges. So I felt like it needed a little pop of some color. So I'm going to take a contrasting color in yellow and just add a few splatters. I picked out some sayings, some very positive sayings from the Tim Holtz Small Talk stickers. I just placed those right over that background. Now I'm outlining them with a black journal pen. And then I wanted some more splatters because I love splatters. So I'm taking this white gloss spray from Dina Wakley and I'm just adding that all over. You could totally use any kind of white ink if you water it down, or white paint, and get the same look. So that wraps up my third project, using one stamp 3 different ways. I love these cute little ATC cards, and I hope you enjoyed seeing me make them. I think the background stamp added such a great texture and interest in the background of these. I ended up making 8 of them that you can see here. I just want to thank you guys for sticking with me in this little bit of a longer video. If you did, please like that video and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this one. As always, when you're sharing your fabulous Brutus Monroe projects, please use the hashtag Brutus Monroe. And if you're inspired by something that I've created, feel free to tag me on social media at Inky Fairy Designs. I love to see what you're creating out there as well. And again, thank you so much for watching this video. Until the next one, stay safe and do something creative. Bye.